Hey, Double D, back again. Today I want to talk about Mythic Raid. For the past three Dragonflight raid tiers, my guild and I have pushed cutting edge, and we land within the top 1,000, averaging about a 800 spot. Not that that really matters a whole lot, but contextually, you can see that we're far from top end players when it comes to Mythic raiding. We're working on Mythic Queen right now. We'll probably get it within the next couple weeks whenever we're done slapping around that juicy booty of hers. But Mythic Raid mechanically is just feeling kind of wild. Now, I'm not talking about mechanics where you gotta plan ahead or have some organization on the front end. Those are fine. I'm not even talking about goofy shit, like I race change to a Dwarf Paladin for Sarkareth because the racial can dispel a debuff that you get. That's just a minus 25 on me. Now, we got CE for it, and that's great, and some people, I guess, probably pay a lot more. But the mechanics that I'm talking about are the stuff that typically feels like bullshit, or it feels unfair, or it's just extremely frustrating to play into. Off the top of my head, like Kurok Grim Totem phase transitions, or Echo of Neltharian's Volcanic Heart debuffs, or the entirety of the Skarn fight. That thing, I was the paladin tank who had to run around and just soak bombs for most of the fight. Please, God, never again. Please don't do that. Any boss that could be chalked up to weak aura bullshit, where you have to do some whack-ass macro presses or have map overlays and priority lists, things that make you feel like you're fighting against add-ons for the first 30, 50, 100 pulls, whatever it may be, instead of the boss's actual mechanics. Now, private auras are partly to blame for this. They were worse previously, and I would say they're not so bad now, maybe even unnoticeable, but those mechanics that just seem outright unfair, especially if you don't have these advanced tools to deal with those mechanics, if you're trying to just natively play the game. They're typically the randomized selection mechanics that are extremely punishing if failed, if not outright pass-fail altogether. Now, two examples of this, the first being Brood Twister Eggs on Ovanax, where players are afflicted with a debuff that after a few seconds will explode, and you need it to explode onto some egg clusters within the boss's room, and it takes two players' debuffs exploding on the same cluster of eggs to break them and release the adds inside. And this happens to multiple players throughout multiple points in the fight for the entirety of the fight. And if you miss one, it's probably a wipe. Or at least it was a wipe 99% of the time when we were progging this fight. And that can feel really unfair when it looks visually like you are overlapping circles, but because you didn't jab your debuff into the butt cheeks of the eggs well enough, one didn't pop and now it's all over. There's no outplay there, there's nothing you can do about it. The second being the Dispel mechanic on Silken Court, where players are afflicted with a debuff that must be dispelled on top of one of the bosses before she finishes a raid wiping cast. It happens very quickly, it afflicts multiple people, and you need to dispel them quickly, one after the other, to make sure that you interrupt the boss. And if you don't, hey, you guessed it, it's a wipe. And this is all happening within a fight where the player space is already a clusterfuck. And these are the types of mechanics that, alongside the mass amount of visual bullshit you have to deal with, can start to feel unfair, especially if there's any inconsistency or it feels buggy at times. You feel like you have to rely on those priority lists to read through or weak aura announcements to tell you when to do something, because what is the alternative? You just don't have the native tools or time to do anything about it otherwise, right? It's where you take this hard leap away from just gaming to reading spreadsheets. And it feels like as time has gone on, this has gotten tougher and tougher because the add-ons have gotten stronger and stronger. It has exacerbated the problem. They are extremely clever, and at worst, it can feel like if you don't have these tools or the ability to manage them, you're just going to end up waiting for nerfs before you can actually make any progress. Also, just a quick sidebar, it feels like this heavily incentivizes you to not re-clear. The hyper-punishing pass-fail mechanics kind of just feel like a kick in the dick. Because even late in the season, with all the eye level you could want, all the drops you could want, stack and raid buff, it still doesn't matter because it doesn't do 90% of your health, it does 100% of your health all the time. So who would want to re-clear? Who wants to re-prog anything? Especially if you have roster turnover or fill-ins. Who wants to go through and redo weak aura assignments or set up new lists to announce that this person marks these eggs or you have the fourth kick on every third worm or, any of that shit? Who wants to do all that? The personal responsibility is so high that your raid can't even really outplay it. It's just you wipe and you go again. And this sucks even more because of how the Mythic Raid lockout works. If your guild extends, well, you just don't get to go back and kill those bosses. So if you needed any of the loot, well, sucks butt, bud, because there's just no way for you to snag any of that. You can't jump into a pug and open up some Great Vault slots. You're just stuck in prison. And that's really all there is to it. But, that's just a sidebar. Maybe they'll look at that one day. And this all culminates into, should these tools and add-ons be allowed in Raid, or the game as a whole, but how it's affecting the encounter design. And I think I'm really starting to lean towards this has got to be turned down significantly, because it just feels like too much. Now, before you pitchfork, I am not a no add-ons in my game guy. Mods are cool, I just don't want my interface to look like a Star Wars flight sim. Functionality things, people should be allowed to customize and tailor their experience with profiles and themes that they like. If I could mount and anchor action bars and buffs and debuffs onto the personal resource display in the native game, I probably wouldn't need a class weak aura pack, but it's just not possible, so I rely on it. And not that everyone else has to, but I try to play with the least amount of invasive stuff as possible. As default as I can get it, minimal notifications. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I prefer tanking in raids, because a lot of the time I'm immune to having to download whatever weak aura pack of horseshit that announces the next 30 days of raid mechanics in alphabetical order. I don't have to deal with that. I just gotta deal with Jesse and him making me take Liquefy and Feast back to back, you absolute goon. We swapped over to where I have to take the Feast now because you couldn't get the taunting right. You're doing a good job. You're raid leading and tanking, and you're not dying most of the time. You're doing a good job. I'm so sorry, Jesse. I don't mean, this isn't about you. It's not about you, it's about the mechanics. And so I do think the closer we get towards just game, instead of waiting for my timestamp and a raid tools note, that's for the better. Whatever leans more towards me interacting with the playspace, using my kit to overcome the boss, the mechanics, the Jessies, whatever it may be. I do think that's going to ultimately, in the future, be the better approach. The biggest takeaway going forward is that the encounter design shouldn't feel unfair without these tools, and players shouldn't feel the need to have them in order to overcome the challenges. And I don't think you can achieve that without clawing back some of that functionality that the third-party stuff steers for you. Reducing the amount of gadgets, the hints, the clippy notifications that you get so that you can just play the game and show up and skill diff the boss. The caveat to that being, if you claw back that functionality and reduce or outright remove the tool utility, then the native game needs to support and enable players to be able to perform within a reasonable time frame. The game has to have room for you to improv. Next raid has a lot of gambling inspiration, so it'd be pretty sweet to randomly proc some more firing from the hip solutions instead of running excelmechanics.exe. That'd be pretty tight. Also, please make a boss fight where you can mount your little goblin car and speed through the room, ramming into the boss and dealing a huge amount of damage in a fiery explosion. That'd be sick as fuck. Like Tendril, but without the seeds. But please God, do not do seeds again. Thanks for watching. I gotta get back to prepping my body bag for the back-to-back tank busters I'm gonna eat at raid tonight. Also, for the one guy who keeps asking for a song at the end of the video, like I've done in a bunch of mine, you know what? This one's for you. Here's one inspired by this tier's bosses. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time.
The stronger species prevails. Lock in, lads, we're already back.
charge into the palace, it's time to attack. Got some spiders throwing ass, we gotta give them a whack. Glad they got 8 legs, that's just more shit to snap. Wading through hordes, man, get a load of this. Just a matter of time. My blade gives the queen a kiss. Web wrap gift for Christmas, you'll find a clenched fist. They put Kagger in a wheelchair, now the raiders are pissed. Her protector falls first, though Grax is a bitch. Horror up next, slap him back into his ditch. Sacred's a boss, could've fooled me. Rash Ammon should've healed up, we're on a killing spree. Wait, what the hell is this bullshit? Egg pops and we're taking some big hits. This slug is cracking open eggs, half the raid's dead. I told you to lock in, I guess we're not him. Think we're gonna need to snag a third tank, especially when Jesse keeps parsing gray ranks. That worm is no more, now who's next? Kaiba's a lurking in the back, Ass is cashing some checks. Dashing and darting, we gotta give her a chance. The shadow clone jutsu, it's all just a dance. Delving deep now and we're rushing the court. Red team is crying and pissing their jorts. Blew off a chest, we carry bosses for sport. This duo's falling over, oh shit, a piercing strike. I just took 2 stacks, Jesse, that's not very hype. Finally clutched the disc pills, now they're taking a hike. Hunting the queen, yeah, we need our crest. Don't get too close, now she's casting arrest. Phase 1, pumper, stab her right in the chest. About to turn this lair into a whole fucking mess. Poison wasn't enough, so she turns to the void. Sounding scared, now a little paranoid. Scurry to the top, but she can't avoid. Eating tank busters, I'm getting annoyed. Wading through hordes, man, get a load of this. Just a matter of time. My blade gives the queen a kiss. Web wrap gift for Christmas, you'll find a clenched fist. They put Kagger in a wheelchair, now the raiders are pissed. Cut her down to size, broke that weak little neck. Wiped the floor with her ass, left her palace a wreck. She was just in the way, we know what matters in the end. The elf was in charge, guess you needed new friends.